Okay, what I wanted to talk about tonight, and it will hopefully it'll take me not too long to go through this, but we have been working very, very hard, really since springtime. We were shut down on Monday, March the 16th, and some of the comments that were read tonight by Sarah Swan indicated that, I think our teachers, our principals, the central office team, and especially in curriculum, worked really, really hard, and they were able to really pivot very quickly to start working in a remote setting by doing the online learning that we did. So they worked very, very hard, but we learned a lot. We felt like we did pretty good in this emergency situation that we found ourselves in these unprecedented times that we never really could have imagined would have occurred. But we learned a lot, and since then we've been working very hard to make sure that as we look towards the return of school, that we have many things in place. So what I'm going to share with you tonight is kind of a plan that we've kind of coined with the saying of Elks back to school, and some options and some ideas that we wanted to share with the Board of Education as we look to move forward to August. So I wanted to share that really one of the things that we did at the close of last school year, at the end of May, the curriculum department did send out 3 surveys, one to parents, one to teachers, and one to students. And we solicited information from all 3 of those groups. We had a pretty good response. We had about 5,000 surveys that were returned to the department, and the department really took some time throughout the summer to look at those, to study those, to put things together. I did have the opportunity then to share those with you as well, and give you some idea of the input that we received from those surveys. Really starting right away, and actually the meetings that we were calling check-in meetings with all the building principals actually started in March, soon after we were shut down. But throughout the summer, we have continued to meet with all building principals by level, and that's happened every week. And we've called those check-in meetings so that they were actually just that, checking in, dialoguing, having conversations back in the spring about how things were going. Did we need to do something differently? Did we need to look at some other ways of supporting our students in the remote environment? And this summer, it's all been about planning. We also, again, the curriculum department reached out to representative groups of teachers from every level, and they have continued to meet with those advisory teams throughout the weeks as well. In addition to that, we have all collaborated with many other area school districts throughout Montgomery County. I've been in a meeting once a week with all of the other 16 Montgomery County superintendents. I know that John Westney has been involved with other business managers throughout Montgomery County on a regular basis. And I know our curriculum department has also been in many meetings throughout this summer as well with other their counterparts throughout Montgomery County. In addition to that, I know the superintendents, myself included, we've had several meetings with Jeff Cooper, the public health commissioner for Dayton and Montgomery County. Obviously, we've been in touch with representatives from the Ohio Department of Education, and we've received information from the Ohio Department of Health, American Academy of Pediatrics, and many other places that have submitted, and we've studied a lot of literature, a lot of guidance, a lot of consideration from an enormous amount of information and literature that was put out regarding this unprecedented time that we're in. So it's been a very, very, very busy summer. We've all been involved in numerous meetings every week. In fact, so many meetings each week, it's been kind of unusual for us to have any downtime at all this summer. Not that we always had downtime, but it was a little bit slower in many other summers than it's been this summer. So we wanted to share that as we plan towards this coming August, which is about 6 weeks away, or what we hope will be the start of another school year, we wanted to make sure that we kept the following guiding principles always in the forefront. And those were always the target that we were looking at as we had conversations about what back to school might mean and what it might look like. And so those included the things that you can see on the screen there, making sure that the health and safety of our school community was our top priority, ensuring that we had effective and equitable teaching and learning opportunities for all of our students and all of our families, supporting the emotional well-being of students and staff, and providing essential service to our community. So these were our guiding principles that we tried to keep in the forefront as we engaged our planning for back to school. So what I'm going to share with you tonight is really two options that we have come up with. And I'm going to go through option one first in detail, and then option two secondly in some detail as well. And I will preface this by saying that not only has it been a very, very busy summer with all the meetings and all the various different sessions that we've all been associated with throughout the summer, things have changed and they continue to change. And I think if there's been a frustration about this summer, one of those frustrations has been that just when we kind of think we have a good idea about the path that we're heading down to support our students, our parents, our families, our staff, things change a little bit. And so again, I would tell you that probably several weeks ago, we had a great plan where we were looking very strongly at bringing all of our students back 100% every single day. We knew that that would be challenging, but we had a good plan in place, and I'll share that plan in just a second. We've also come up with an alternate plan, which we're calling a 50-50 blended model. And this is a model that would be a little bit different than bringing all of their students back every single day. This potentially could look at bringing half of our student body back, or 50% of our students back, say on a Monday. The other half of the students would come to school on Tuesday, and we would continue to rotate that 50-50 blended model. And I will share the benefits of that in just a minute as well. One of the hearing of the public comments that Sarah read, talked about being prepared to go fully remote. And so one of the things that we've worked hard this summer is looking at the viability of us to make sure that we provide equal access for all of our students. So last month, the Board of Education did approve a purchase of additional Chromebooks so that in August we can provide a device for every student in the school district, and something that they will keep for the entire school year. That reduces the requirement to sanitize the device when other students maybe were going to be sharing devices. Secondly, it's something that they can take with them and have at home, and it's something that we can pivot and move very quickly should we have to move to a fully remote mode like we were last spring. So I'm going to move on and give some additional details to this option one. And whether it's 100% in person or the 50-50 blended model, both of these models can fall underneath this option one and can happen, I think, pretty efficiently in this first option. So option one, from a student standpoint, like I said before, one of those options would be students would attend school all day and every day. We would work hard with our staff in every single building to reconfigure and to maximize social distancing as much as possible. The building schedules would be modified to reduce transitions and to limit the number of students each person comes in contact with daily. And like I said just a second ago, really, that each student would be assigned a device, a Chromebook laptop device to use throughout the school year. Obviously, for any students that receive special services, special education services, those services would continue as well. Regarding lunch, we would serve lunch every day at school. Students obviously would have that option to pack lunch if they wanted to do so. Under this current plan, we had discussed that juniors and seniors at Centerville High School who have traditionally been allowed to leave the campus, go out to lunch. At least when we put this together, we were thinking this would be something we would continue. Again, though, we would modify lunch and recess to incorporate health and safety protocols whenever this would be possible. Some of our unified arts classes that include like physical education, performing arts, and other kind of large class type areas would be reorganized or modified. The current guidance says, like, for example, with physical education, as much as possible, try to have those classes outside when the weather is good, and try to, again, make sure that you do as much social distancing as possible. In our K-5 buildings, instead of our students going to the integrated arts teachers, which would mean the art room, the gym for physical education, or other types of integrated arts experiences, we would actually ask those teachers to travel to the classrooms and work with the students there, again, to reduce student transitions. Unfortunately, because of the guidelines regarding mass gatherings, currently we're looking at no field trips or other large gatherings within school, things like assemblies, performances, or programs, which is a shame. But again, I think that keeps us under the guidelines that are currently out from public health. We would ask that face coverings would be required for all students and staff. I did provide to the Board of Education last week a mock-up or a draft of a policy regarding face masks that I would ask you maybe to consider as we continue this dialogue and discussion. Currently, our thoughts were that we would ask students to bring their own mask as part of their school supplies. We are also going to work hard to make sure that students understand and practice social distancing as much as possible. I know the mask and the wearing of masks can sometimes be somewhat controversial. I know that the governor had recommended that students 3rd grade up through 12th grade should be mandated to wear masks. I think it would make sense to try to go a little bit lower than that with the board's approval. And I think if possible, to try to have as many students wearing masks as possible would be a good thing. We also know that we need to make sure that things are done age appropriately. Obviously, there are some things that the policies recommend based on the age of children. They would obviously be expected to, if they had any kind of physical limitations as far as trouble breathing, anything else that would be hard for students to wear masks. We would obviously work with students in those situations. But again, I think everything that we've heard and read in the research believes that wearing masks is very important for the safety of everybody in our school buildings. In the event that a student could not report to school in person, like if they were out on an extended absence, like 14 days for a quarantine, that student would have that Chromebook with them, and they could stay connected with their teachers in classrooms remotely. And they would not be recorded as being absent. And, you know, in some cases, the student may feel fine, and they're just really being made to quarantine at home to make sure that they're not contagious or they don't have COVID-19. So again, they would have this device and they would be able to stay in touch with their class and stay in the loop regarding all of their assignments. As far as cleaning and prevention goes, you know, we would ask parents to help us and be part of our team, and would ask that they would do self-screenings at home. That would include temperature checks, making sure that their children were healthy when they were coming to school, and if there were anything that they were suffering from as far as an illness or some kind of a symptom, that we would ask them to stay home. But again, those self-screenings, including those temperature checks, we would ask our parents to help us out with that and do that at home every day before they get on the school bus or enter school. Obviously, the second bullet point says exactly what I just said, that if anybody is feeling sick or displaying symptoms, we would ask them to stay home. John Westney, our business manager, has worked hard all summer long to build up a stockpile of supplies and build up an inventory of supplies that includes cleaning supplies, disinfectants to clean workspaces. We are obviously going to encourage frequent hand washing. Hand sanitizer will be available in every single classroom in our district. And we may look at, depending on the building, the size of the building, the age of the students, other things like one-way traffic areas, also working hard to maybe establish some things in large gathering areas that will prevent the lack of social distancing occurring. Hallway travel is also going to be looked to be modified to increase physical distancing as well. We're looking to vary our custodial and maintenance staff hours to overlap a little bit to make sure that they are overlapping the various shifts that we have in the district to continue to clean and disinfect all the classrooms, the restrooms, common areas, and high-touch surfaces. We have again invested in some equipment over the summer that will display mist and we have electrostatic cleaning machines that are used to disinfect spaces. We also use these on our school buses as well. Every building in our district will have touchless water bottle filling stations. We are adding some of those this summer, and some of our buildings we already had those in. And so students will be encouraged to bring their own water bottle with them each day. And the other pieces that I think they're referred to as a bubbler will be disabled. So there will be no traditional drinking fountains. Students will have the opportunity to place their water bottles under the touchless water bottle filling station to fill them up with water. Regarding transportation, we will continue to provide routine bus transportation to and from school. The current guidance indicates that we can have 2 students per seat in a bus seat. If there are siblings from the same family, they can sit together wherever possible. We will ask and require that all students and staff members wear a face covering when they're on the school bus. We would also recommend social distancing while the students are at their bus stop. And then we will modify the arrival and dismissal also to reduce the number of students that each person comes in contact with, also keeping the social distancing in place as well. And we'll be using those electrostatic misting machines in our school buses throughout the day, before and after each trip. So again, working hard to sanitize and keep things as clean as possible. Before I go on to option 2, I mentioned that probably several weeks ago, we thought that the all day, every day was the best opportunity to get our students back into school. Obviously, Montgomery County is going through a little bit of surge right now with COVID-19. There is a mandatory wearing of masks in place right now. And so we have been discussing more of a blended 50-50 model, which I explained very briefly just a few minutes ago. I'd like the board to maybe consider this as an option at this particular point in time, where we bring half the students back on a Monday. Those students that were in the building on Monday would not come to school on Tuesday. They would use their devices to actually access the classroom experience. They could see the teacher. They wouldn't be able to see the other students in the classroom, see the teacher, hear what the teacher is saying, get assignments, and then the other half of the students would actually be in class while the teacher is teaching. And then we would rotate that on an every other day basis for the students. Obviously, bringing 50% of the students in on each day does provide us the opportunity to continue to enhance that opportunity for social distancing. It gives us an opportunity to spread the students out more through that social distancing, and allows us to continue all the other initiatives that I just mentioned. So option 2 is a much different student experience. but we feel it's important that we offer this. So we know that there are some families in our community that would rather not send their students back to our school buildings in August. And this may be because the students themselves have some compromised health issues going on. We know that there's not a vaccine yet, and understand that, and there is a lot of anxiety about that. So we would provide an option for parents to choose this option 2, and they would basically operate in the following way. So students parents would not have to withdraw their students from Centerville City Schools. They would still maintain enrollment as a Centerville City Schools student. Again, each student would be assigned a Chromebook laptop device, just like all of the other students in our district. But the difference would start with this third bullet here, and students would actually learn in an online environment with virtual teacher support. And this online environment is not going to be the traditional Centerville City Schools experience. This would actually be through kind of a third-party educational vendor who would provide a curriculum that would meet all of the Ohio learning standards, and would provide an opportunity. And basically this would be for students and for families that really would not like to have their students set foot in Centerville City Schools because of health concerns and health reasons. This online learning also is individual in nature. It allows students to kind of move at their own pace as well. So again, like I said just a second ago, this experience will meet all of the Ohio learning standards as well as our curriculum, but it will not necessarily have the same pacing that it would happen in person, whether it be the blended 50-50 model that I just talked about, or the every student coming back to school every day option. These third-party educational vendors that we're looking at have all of the courses. They have advanced placement courses as well. They have special education courses. And so all the needs of students, should a parent decide that they want this option for their family or for their students, we can provide this, and families do not have to make the choice about withdrawing their students to go outside Centerville City Schools if they would like this as an option. So again, what would happen, just to give you kind of a brief overview or a glimpse about how this would happen, is students would basically log in daily and complete work. This could include a variety of different strategies, such as instructional videos, independent practice, unit assessments. We would also ask, because we are going to be paying for this third-party educational vendor, that parents, families, and students make a commitment of doing it for the semester. And then we would obviously be reevaluating the health situation as we would close out the first semester. Basically, if we had to go to a remote learning option where all of our other students across the district were in a remote learning mode similar to last spring, they would go ahead and do that, and our Centerville City Schools teachers would teach in that mode. The difference would be that these students were already working in an online environment and would be doing this online learning through this third-party educational vendor that we would be using. So still somewhat the same, pretty much the same in many respects, but slightly different. And again, this would be a choice that families could have an opportunity to choose if they were worried about their children coming back into school regarding health concerns. Wanted to talk to the board a little bit about a concept that we've come up with here at the central office team. We've developed this from listening to some of the guidance that's been out throughout Montgomery County. There are a lot of districts looking at doing a similar type of thing. The current school calendar that we have published on our website indicates that the first day for school for students is going to be on Wednesday, August the 19th. and staff report that week. That's the first week of school for staff to report as well. And historically, they report on that Monday, August the 17th. And again, what we would like to do is take advantage of that week to conduct training. And I'll get to that schedule in just a second. But we would, if with your permission, instead of starting school on that Wednesday, August the 19th, we would like to delay that by 3 student days and actually start the next Monday on August the 24th. And I'll explain why we would do that in just a second. Our preschool has always started that week after those first 3 days, and we would continue to have them start that week as well. So it would be no change for our preschool. This would give you a concept or an idea of the type of training that we think would be necessary and important, no matter what type of, whether it be 100% every day in session or the 50-50 blended model. But we think it would be very, very, very important to make sure that we took time with all of our building staff to go over things, to share ideas, protocols, safety features, all of those kinds of things. Particularly on that first day, which historically this year would be Monday, August the 17th, there would be an all-district meeting in the Performing Arts Center that I would facilitate. And then after I would be finished with my greeting and welcome, then all of the staff would go back to their respective buildings and have their opening day meetings with all of their colleagues from the building and with their principal leading that meeting. So we still feel there's a need to do some district building and opening day events. Probably would do those, again, practicing social distancing. It probably would have to be done via Zoom, and then potentially have some opportunities for grade level or content area team meetings later on throughout the day. The day would be spent though planning and preparation and practicing for the start of the school year in a much different way. Day 2, we envision might be conducted by our curriculum department, and that there would be advanced training about remote practices, looking at a variety of online resources that we have in the district, things like Mystery Science, Nucella, Freckle, and many other things that we have here that our certificated staff can access to do remote learning and to enhance remote learning. Also, a little bit about what these modified schedules might look like, whether we be looking at a block schedule or a traditional schedule. That's still yet to be finalized, but we have some options there. Looking at assessment strategies. Bridges is the new elementary math curriculum that we're implementing this year, and so there'll be some follow-up on that implementation. Some conversation about setting up the classroom during this COVID-19 situation that we're in regards to practicing social distancing, and also some instructional pacing that would take place as well. Day 3, we envision working with technology, Google Classroom, which we worked with in the spring, but also looking at best practices. You know, again, we felt like when we were in survival mode last spring, we did okay, but we need to do better than that now if we find ourselves in a remote situation again. And so we've worked hard throughout the summer to put those ideas together, and we feel like we could use day 3 to actually do some in-servicing and working with our staffs around and surrounding technology. Practices, expectations, using Zoom, Screencastify, Flipgrid, and a lot of other technology tools that we have in place that we could use. Really, day 4 would be about protocols revolving around health and safety, providing expectations for both staff and students, reviewing our expectations, regarding masks in the district, any other kinds of training, such as maybe identifying symptoms, sanitation protocols, monitoring students during lunch, recess, and transition, what those situations will look like, and then just providing additional information to our staff regarding quarantine protocols and those kinds of things. And the last day on that Friday, we felt would be having conversations about transitioning back to some type of in-person learning. It's been a long time since our students have been back in the building. The COVID-19 is still around. It's all around us. Working hard to have conversations about how do we build that classroom community during this unprecedented time. A lot of things have happened in our society and our world, and how we need to be prepared as a staff to meet our students and be prepared and ready to handle any kind of social emotional types of things that our students may bring into the building as school picks back up again. So that's kind of the concept that we've been working on. And like I said, a few weeks ago, probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, if you would have asked me, I felt like we had the opportunity and the availability to bring everybody back. We had worked hard on a number of different protocols, safety measures to have in place. Obviously, things have changed a little bit, and we still have 6 weeks before we get to August. So things may change again. I'm an optimist. I'd like to believe that things are going to improve. I'm not sure that that's realistic right now, but so, we are in a red county right now, obviously with a mask mandate, kind of going through a surge right now. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that the board has. I know that Sheree and Adam, the rest of the central office team, would be willing to jump in and help as well. So what kind of questions do you have for us? And
hold on, Dave. Hold on, Dave. Dave, hold on just a second. I know everyone has a lot of questions, so we ought to try to do it in some kind of an organized fashion because we're not just talking over everybody. So Dave, if you want to go ahead, and then we'll just go down the line for every board member, if that's okay, so we don't keep talking over each other.
Well, thanks. Tom and Administrator, I want to thank you for the time and effort. I know this has been a trying time. I just want to start by saying, number one is I think I am, and I'm sure all of you are aware of the impact this is going to have, whatever decision we make on the parents and the families. There are a lot of families that, are going to have difficulty finding childcare in certain situations, and whatever we decide will not please everyone. But from my standpoint and my point of view, I mean, my number one priority is the safety of the children, the students, and the staff within the school. With that being said, I needless to say, talked with many parents and many hours over the last few weeks in my office on a daily basis, just about every patient that comes in, and gotten feedback from parents. And they, like everyone here, everyone is very concerned about this, and there's a lot of fear about what's going on. Some of the reasoning behind why some parents feel we should just go all in and have people there all day is because kids don't get as sick. And that may be true as of right now, and it looks like some of the studies show that the children tend not to be as sick as some of the older folks and things like that. But I think it's also very early in that process right now. We are starting to see in this area and around the country more and more younger folks becoming ill and infected by the COVID virus. I know I've expressed to some of you over the last couple of weeks. This past Thursday alone in my office, I had 5 positive cases of COVID. And despite what people think, they're not just all asymptomatic cases. Some are, some aren't. I've had one as young as 6 months. I've had one 5-year-old, and most of the rest have been the teenage population. Today, I had confirmed a 2-month-old that has multisystem syndrome here in town that I admitted to the hospital last week. So the reality of these situations are, there are kids that are getting sick from this. One of the comments you hear a lot is about transmission, that the kids don't transmit this disease as much. Therefore, it's safer to be in school, and the teachers and the rest of the people shouldn't worry about it. Well, the reality is, I don't think anyone knows right now the severity of the transmission in young kids. It's hard for me to believe that, kids that are positive and getting sick, or kids that are positive and not getting sick, aren't able to transmit this disease. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If you're 14 years of age and you're a kid, you shouldn't transmit it. But if you're 18, all of a sudden you're able to transmit it. So certainly we may find the studies continue to show that children are less likely to transmit the disease, but that's really at this point, it's just an unknown. So kids are getting sick because of this. And, you know, we're seeing now with after the 4th of July, people going on vacations and going to hot zones, these numbers are going to go up. They're not going to go down anytime soon. And it's not just going to disappear all of a sudden. So we are going to be faced with this situation. I do think, you know, I'm fully aware, as most people are, of the emotional and social needs of the students and the impact of being in school. For that reason, I do think, and I am all for going with a 50-50 blended model. It gives us the ability to have these kids interacting in school and socially and emotionally being involved. It gives us, as you said earlier, Tom, the ability to minimize the interactions with a lot of kids. We're able to space, and we all know that the social distancing and the mask use significantly reduces the impact of this disease and reduces the spread of this disease. Having half the kids in classroom instead of having 24 in a class, having 12 in a class allows us to have that 6-foot spacing between the students. So therefore, we should see hopefully a little less impact on disease spread. On the buses, the same situation, 50-50 blend. There'll be less kids riding those buses, therefore easier to space out. We won't have to have 2 kids in every single seat. We should be able to space a couple of seats between them. All positive impacts on these things. So again, I just want to emphasize, I am all for, and again, if parents want to choose the all virtual experience, absolutely, I think they should have the right to do that. But I think at this point, make a decision now rather than waiting and waiting and waiting as we get closer, so we can parents can plan what they want to do. I am all for the 50-50 blend, and I think that is the way that I would vote and recommend that we go down this road. Again, parents are going to be upset, and the impact is going to be severe, and I'm not negating that effect, but I think from the safety of the students and the teachers, there are a lot of teachers that are very fearful of coming back to these situations and catching this disease. And the reality is that, you know, they're adults, that they can get this disease and they can get sick from this. And I think until you have a contact, or you know someone who's been sick or someone that's passed away, it doesn't seem as real to you. But more and more people getting this, you're going to know someone or be close to someone that has this. The reality also is we know that at some point that someone, either a student or teacher, is going to come down with this. And we need to be prepared, like we're doing, for those kids going out for, you know, 10 days, 14 days until they're cleared of this illness. So having the 50-50 gives us so many more options than bringing everyone back into school. So again, I applaud you for coming up with these plans, and I like this. And I know I talked to Tom, just one last thing. I talked to Tom about the juniors and seniors being able to go out to school. It is not something I would recommend if we're going to do 50-50 blend. I think we have the ability and the space to have these juniors and seniors and stay in school and eat lunch in school. They go out over lunch. They're going to go families. They're going to gather together. They're basically going out. They can collect germs, interacting with adults. And then they're just going to come back at lunch and bring those things back to school. So I think also with the 50-50 blend, we should do away with the juniors and seniors lunch. I am all for looking and reassessing this as we go on. But I think, like you said, I think for the fall semester, the wisest thing would be to adopt this 50-50 plan with the option of 100% virtual if they like. Thanks very much for listening.
Jeff, do you have anything you want to comment on or have questions?
Yes, Dr. Henderson, as far as the 50-50 blend, kids come on Monday, half come on Monday, half come on Tuesday. How are you going to equalize that out over the semester?
Well, that's a good question, Mr. Schroyer. What we would attempt to do is we would try to keep families on the same rotation schedule. So one thing we would look at doing is if a family had an elementary, middle, and high school student, for example, we would try to keep them on the same rotation. So we would be working with our student information system, our computer system, to to look at balancing the numbers. So just the raw numbers of splitting that in half, but also trying to keep families together. Dr. Rohr mentioned maybe the impact on families as far as parents going to work. The idea would be that potentially there'd be older siblings that could be home watching younger brothers or sisters as well. So we would have some work to do, but we believe it's viable that we can come up with that using our computer student information system to do both the balancing number wise and also to try to keep siblings together, the same families together on the same rotation.
I'm most concerned about our biggest asset, and that's our employees. And I'm concerned that if we go 100% back, all the students back, I think that puts our staff and our employees much more at risk. For whatever it's worth, I believe that 50-50 blended model is the best model for us for the fall semester. That's all I need, John.
Thank you. Ms. Sparks?
Yeah, I have a few questions. You said we're gonna go Monday, some kids, then the next kids would come in Tuesday. Why aren't we going Monday, Tuesday with the same kids, Wednesday deep cleaning the school, and then having the other half come Thursday, Friday? And then deep cleaning it again on Friday?
Well, I mean, again, there's all kinds of different models that we could look at, something like you just mentioned, Mrs. Sparks, or, we thought that there was a lot more consistency. We feel like we can do the deep cleaning that we need to do. And we felt like, teachers being able to see their kids, their students every other day was better than not seeing them for a couple days and things like that. We even talked this morning at our department staff meeting that, for example, if it was an elementary situation, the teacher could actually do handouts or something to the students that they were seeing on that Monday, knowing that they would bring that back then on Wednesday, even though maybe they would. And then, we just felt like that was provided the most consistent approach to keeping learning as consistent as possible. So, there are a lot of, models out there that, you mentioned another alternative there. But again, we do believe that we've invested in quite a bit of equipment where we'd be looking at varying and modifying the schedules of our custodians in the building. And we feel like we could clean those effectively every night and work through those situations.
Okay, and then the kids who, let's say, go to school on Monday, then they're off on Tuesday, will they just be on the computer all day then watching the teacher? How?
So I think if you like right now, I'm in my office and I'm standing up obviously in front of my laptop screen. And my former, when I was a classroom teacher, I was a social studies teacher at the high school level. So, I would, and again, because we'll be social distancing, our concept would be that instead of me moving around the classroom like I would normally like to teach, we're all going to practice social distancing. So we'll have our students spread out. I'm probably not going to walk in between them like I normally would in a regular classroom situation of 24. I'd we'll have all the students probably facing one way. I'd have my Zoom session up that the students that were not in session on that Monday, meaning the Tuesday group, would Zoom in so they could hear me start the class, set the class and say, today we're going to talk about the Renaissance period. We're going to talk about some of the, the great artists and sculptures of that time. In just a few minutes, I'm going to give you present some information to you. Then we're going to have you read some excerpts out of your textbook. Then we're going to have a discussion. And so it wouldn't be, they wouldn't be zooming in the whole class period. So they might hear, what I'm going to cover that particular day in class. They might hear the pacing of the lesson that I planned for that particular class period. And then they would maybe while everybody is reading, they might leave that Zoom meeting or, you know, shut their laptop or their device and do the reading on their own at home, and then come back and maybe be back at the end of the class to listen for the assignment or something like that. So that would be more along the lines of a high school. Obviously, that would look a little bit different. At the elementary, where you have, let me back up before I move to the elementary, but you know, at the high school and middle school, you know, if they had me for first period, then they would be expected to Zoom in with me first period of that day, as an example. The elementary, where they're self-contained classes, they wouldn't necessarily be expected to be in that classroom the entire day. We think that would be too much, but again, they would have an opportunity for that elementary teacher to touch base, maybe even be a part of a read aloud, a lot of other different things that they would be working on in the classroom, and then go off and work on their own. Maybe the teacher would do other activities in the class, and they would do that at home again, and then touch base again later on. So those are all the things that you know, it's going to be a different way of teaching, a different way of working with students, much different than we're used to. But we think that there's some benefits, but we'll have to just approach it differently and think about doing some things differently than the way we used to. So I don't know, Sharita, do you want to jump in any on the elementary, what that day may look like?
One thing I would also mention is we will be using Google Classroom. And so that will be a platform where information can be shared and delivered so that students at home would have handouts or activities or links or things they might need to do what might be happening in the classroom or in a different activity maybe that is getting to the same point, but done in a different way since that group of students is at home.
Okay.
Can I just add something too that I think that, you know, and I appreciate Dr. Rohr's sentiments about the 50-50 because, you know, we've tried to work through this. We've been thinking of those models and how we can, you know, option one, as we've talked about it, although it sounds like our intention isn't to come back 100% in person, but it's about establishing routines for students and our staff. And that was very responsive to the survey data that we received about, you know, as Dr. Henderson talked about, trying to Zoom in at a certain time. And even if we have to go fully remote at some point again, you know, we wouldn't want to do that, but just establishing, okay, you know, this is the time of day and this is the day that I attend my first period or whatever it is at the secondary level. So the technology that, you know, we're going to have is going to afford us to be flexible in those environments and to keep kids connected with our teachers and moving their learning forward.
Other questions, Ms. Sparks?
Yeah, I have two more. Since we bus Incarnation and Spring Valley as well, are they doing the 50-50 model? How's transportation going to look for them? Because they're using our buses.
You know, I don't know. We do bus Incarnation. You're right about that. But we also do Spring Valley. We actually do about 8 or 9 other non-publics as well. So St. Albert, St. Charles, a lot of other schools. I don't have, I can't tell you, I don't have all the routes obviously in my head, but you know, typically the buses that transport the Incarnation also transport to Alter and some of the other non-publics. So, you know, we would continue to route our buses and we would just know we'd have routes every other day for our students. I don't know what Alter has decided to do or what Incarnation has decided to do. I know Spring Valley has continued to stay in touch with me. They would like to kind of mirror or parallel what we're doing here at Centerville Schools. So we would still be required to transport students to the non-publics just like we always have.
But if Incarnation's going 100%,
I'm sorry.
if Incarnation's going 100%, will we have to have more buses then? Because I mean, the way that they're sitting and.
Well, no, I mean, the guidance is that, you know, we on the bus, you know, we would transport the number of students if Incarnation was going 100% every single day, we would transport the Incarnation students that way. our students would not be transported that way. It'd be half of our students every day on the bus. So if that's the way they were going to do that, and that's what we would have to do. So, but it wouldn't affect the students in our district by doing the 50-50 model.
Okay.
We wouldn't have to buy more buses because we currently bus all those kids anyway, and we always have. So,
But if we're doing the social distance on the bus, isn't that required if they're going 100% and we have to social distance on the bus with them?
we are supposed to do the best we can on that social distancing. Again, the guidelines, this is why we kind of like the 50-50 blend, because it allows us to do, we think, the best practice based on the guidelines that are out there right now. It could be, obviously it would have to be a little bit different. And there may be a lot of parents at the non-publics that may drop their students off too. I don't know how that would look exactly. So I should have probably put some calls out to the non-publics to see what they were thinking, but I didn't have a chance really to do that yet. But you're right. I mean, it could potentially decrease that social distancing for some of those buses.
And then since they're on the front line, what do the teachers think of all this? Are they on board? Are they happy? Are they nervous? Since
Well,
they're going to be in the building every day, because they're not doing 50-50. They're there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Right. We need the teachers there every day. But Mr. Kayat, the president of the Centerville Classroom Teachers Association, has joined us tonight. So, Brian is in the meeting with us tonight. So I know we met this morning, with his leadership team and answered a bunch of questions from his team. And I know they are concerned about the safety of staff as well. So I don't know, Brian, do you want to make any comments?
Yeah, I mean, the guidelines coming back to school, their number one goal, buried in about page 4 there, is to save lives. The school board has a very, very tough decision in front of them. There's not a single teacher in our school district that doesn't want to be back in the class, face to face, seeing the kids grow into better students and fine young adults. But at the same time, I've had a great number of teachers reach out about the concern of social distancing and making sure that people are 100% safe, and making sure every effort's made that can be done. So it's kind of a catch-22 in all these positions on what we're going to do, or what can be done. But I think that making sure that people are safe is a huge thing. We can provide an education, we can't provide a life, and we have to make sure we're doing everything possible to make sure that the employees of Centerville City Schools, especially our at-risk population, are getting their needs met and making sure that it's a safe place to work, both emotionally and physically. The social distancing is a huge factor in making sure that environment is safe. There's been several teachers, as Mr. Tarpey, that will has said have retired over the past few weeks that we didn't necessarily think were just due to the risk that they might be having. So you have to make a very, very tough decision on when is it the right time to be in school, and when is it the right time where maybe we do need to be at 100% virtual. So thanks for having me tonight. If you have other questions, feel free to ask.
Those are all my questions. Thank you everyone for answering them.
Mrs. Turnbull?
Thank you. I kind of jotted some notes as we went through the PowerPoint as I reviewed it ahead of time. So my questions will kind of follow the spreadsheet. I had the same question actually as Mrs. Sparks. And this may be a question for Dr. Henderson, for Mr. Kayat, and possibly a little bit for Dr. Rohr. Thinking in terms of the staff, does more of a blocking plan with like an AA, a cleaning day, and a BB, is that better as far as exposure for the teachers? Does it even out to be the same? I understand your point of consistency and more frequent interactions with the students, especially the younger students, but would that potentially be a better plan for our staff? And possibly for the community, would it be an easier pill to swallow for the community, allowing people to maybe block out their work day from home a little bit easier as well?
Allison, if I could just answer the cleaning part in terms of the days. I would hope that at the end of every single day, there's going to be a thorough cleaning, and I assume that's the case.
Right.
So having 2 days and cleaning in 2 days, to me, would be, you need to have a thorough cleaning at the end of every single day, which I'm guessing that's what Dr. Henderson was planning on doing anyhow. So if that's the case, which I think they should do, I don't know if the 2 days will make a big difference.
Well, I'm thinking in terms of those misters, I think I remember from when we paused back in February for the flu, or what we assumed was the flu. I know we were running the misters in the buildings, and would that give some extra time? Is more time better on those? I don't know how those cleaning supplies work. So that's what I was thinking as far as the deep cleaning goes.
Right. Dr. Henderson.
Yeah, I think again, Dr. Rohr is right. You know, we'd be committed to doing that thorough and deep cleaning every night. We're prepared to do that, and we've invested in the equipment and the inventory of supplies to do that. But you know, just there are a variety of different models of, you know, that we could consider on the 50-50 blend. But as far as the cleaning goes, we feel confident that that we have what we need right now to pull that off. Again, John Westney, our business managers, worked hard to stockpile and inventory. We have purchased more machines now to do all of these things. Back in January, you're right. You know, we were using a lot of different misters and things like that. We've kind of gone way beyond that now as we prepare for this year with new machines and new capabilities of sanitizing larger areas much more quicker than we could back in January. So we feel pretty confident we could do that deep cleaning every day.
Okay. And then the blocking outside of the deep cleaning day, I mean, either way, there's 5 days in a week. If we go every other, would the Friday be would it be a weekly every other? Does the blocking make sense as far as exposure, blocking out exposure for the staff that's there 5 days a week regardless? And has the staff been surveyed? Does Mr. Kayat have any indication of if people feel strongly one way or another? I guess that's ultimately my question, not the cleaning part of it, but is that a better route for our staff?
Yeah, we haven't been presented with, or presented with that option to gather that information from staff. Whether it be two A days, 2 B days. So yeah, I don't have an answer for that right now either.
As far, whichever way the 50-50 blend is worked, how would that 5th day of the week be handled? Would it be an every other week?
So if you had an A day on Monday and a B day on Tuesday, then A would come back on Wednesday and B on Thursday, and then A would go on Friday, and then you just keep rotating it on through.
Okay, so then the following week B would be on Monday. Okay.
That's correct, yeah. That's
Okay,
that's the current thinking on our current plan. Yeah, right.
and then in the blended model, would we still offer a Voyager program after school that would follow the same A/B blend?
I think there's a couple things that we first of all, we're kind of wanted to, that's a good question. And it's one of the many, it's been kind of indicative of the summer because there are so many questions out there about so many different things. But I think, yes, we would want to offer Voyager on those rotations like that. I'm checking right now because, there are new preschool limits right now of no more than 9 children right now. And so, we may have to also adhere to those guidelines at Voyager as well. So we'd have to make sure that that those students would be spaced out in smaller groups as part of that Voyager group. So I think right now we could still handle all of that and could still, space the students out appropriately in those small groups. But that's kind of the next thing that we'd be working on. So.
Okay. And I should have prefaced this by saying some of my questions probably get into the weeds a little bit more than we need to at this point, but those are the notes that I jotted down. Is there an ability for us to adjust our plan, obviously not on a weekly or a regular schedule or a frequent schedule, but based on where the state or the county numbers are? Is that feasible? Is that part of the discussion? If we go to purple, do we go fully remote? If we go down to green, I believe yellow's the lowest one, do we try to bring everybody back 100% in person? Do we look at that on a quarter, a semester? Is any of that part of the discussion?
Absolutely, and it's been a lot of the discussion. We think the beauty of option one is that we have a lot of flexibility, and obviously we wouldn't make a change like one day to the next, but potentially and conceivably, we could, if things moved in a positive direction and there was a positive trend moving forward, we could pivot and make a change back to 100%. We'd obviously have to give our parents and everybody a chance to react to that, of course. So we wouldn't do it like on a Tuesday for the next day on Wednesday, but we could do it, very quickly, and we could go either way. Your idea about I think yellow and orange are the lower levels of concern. There are some districts up in the Columbus area, up in Franklin County, that are kind of using those colors as an indication of what kind of support and service they are providing for their students. And in most cases, that looks like yellow and orange are more of the 100% full-time in school every day. When you move to red, it's more of the 50-50 blend. And then if it's purple, total remote at that. So, there's been a lot of conversations about flexibility and being able to flex and move inside that option one based on the circumstances. I think if there's one thing we've learned over the summer is that things continue to change. And I think if there's one thing that's certain is that will continue to be the challenge, I think, for all of us, and being able to react safely and proactively as much as possible to whatever those challenges and new changes come about. But yes, we've had a lot of conversations about being flexible and being able to make changes quickly. And that's also was part of the thinking behind giving every student a device. We worried a lot in the spring about the equal access for our families and for our students. And, we loaned out a bunch of Chromebooks to families that needed them. We loaned out hotspots to families that needed connectivity. And we worked really, really hard to connect to every single student in the district. And we checked on them. We did reach out to them. So we feel much better in that we feel like with every student having that device now, and we'll still have hotspots available should families need those, but we just feel like we can react much quicker and in a much more proactive way than we were in the springtime.
Okay. As far as I know, especially the primary buildings rely a lot on volunteers and the AVP program. Will there be restrictions on visitors and volunteers in the building? A lot of them are going to be are utilized in the integrated arts, and if those teachers are traveling, maybe they're not as needed. But I do know a lot of the classroom teachers rely heavily on those, especially with the cuts that we had to make. What will be the regulation on visitors or volunteers in the buildings?
That's a good question. I think right now we would start by not allowing any visitors or volunteers in the buildings right now, unfortunately.
And then regarding the masks, are we providing, is the district providing the masks to the teachers? And will we have masks available for students that are unable to provide, don't show up with them? How will we require a doctor's note if somebody refuses to wear one, can't wear one? How are we going to enforce that? It's obviously a hot button issue right now.
We're going to provide all of the staff with a face covering, and we're going to ask, make the student face masks part of their school supplies that students would bring to school. But we do have, again, a large inventory, actually just received in a large inventory of child size face masks, disposable ones that that we would, have on all of our school buses. For example, if there's a student at the bus stop that doesn't have a mask, we would give them one, as they're getting on. We would, but we are going to encourage, our families to make that face mask part of the school supplies that they come to school with. And we'll supply a face covering to all of our staff, at the beginning of the year. But again, we do have also adult size, supplies as well that we could use, and we'll stockpile, extra inventory at all of our offices throughout all of our buildings to make sure that we're covered for those kinds of scenarios. And I think, part of the policy, again, we're kind of transitioning into the conversation about a policy. I did give you an example of kind of a draft of a policy that we could look at and consider. We have a little bit of time, but again, I personally, I would recommend that we come up with a policy and that we expect, obviously staff, but all of our students to wear a mask, with the exception of those options that are reasonable, that are age related for our younger students, for other health associated things that may be limiting for some of those students from wearing it. But I think as much as possible, we would want to encourage students to wear them. And some districts have implemented what they're calling mask breaks, so that students can get a spell of taking it off. I mean, we all kind of do that. We're wearing them all the time. But when I'm in my office by myself, I like I am now, I've got it off and I'm not using, but it's on my person all the time. And if somebody knocks on my door and wants to talk, we keep social distance. We all have our mask on as we're meeting here in the office. So I think there'd be some conversations that we'd have to work through a little bit, but that would be my recommendation as far as the face masks go.
Are face shields, clear face shields, an option for teachers, specifically at the younger grades where they're learning the phonetics and things? I mean, that's such an important piece of the puzzle for them. I don't know if they provide the same protection, but it would at least provide the children a smile or an example of how to form letters and blends and words and whatnot.
So we have about 1,000 of these face masks that are actually a part of a safety glasses that attach to that. They're very, they conceal the face very well. They're deep, and we have thought about that as well. We also have the masks that have the window. They're clear, that we have coming in as well. We know that in some of our classrooms, like with our speech pathologists and stuff like that, they will, need to use some of those kinds of masks as well. So yes, we've tried to think of a number of different personal protective equipment that we may need. And like I said, we've worked hard to build up our inventory over the summer.
Allison, can I just answer that question a little bit too?
Yes, please.
Shields are not as effective as masks. The reason the shields typically came into place, it's mostly in a hospital setting where you would wear a mask, and then the shield is to cover you from protection for your eyes if someone is coughing or their liquids, components, or things like that. So having a face shield on without a mask is definitely not as effective as having a mask. I do agree with Tom. I think if you have the mask with the see-through and you can see it, that's great. If a teacher was to use a shield and she was social distancing or he was social distancing, that's probably okay to teach. But if we're going to be anywhere within 6 feet, you would want to have a mask along with the shield.
Okay. And then under cleaning and prevention, students and staff members should stay home if they are sick. Are we going to mandate how long we want them to stay home? How, symptom free for so long, more so than we have in the past? And then how does that affect teachers as far as if and when they are exposed or contact tracing within a classroom? Do we determine that? Does county health determine that? How does that come into play?
Right. We would follow the protocols and the guidelines by CDC and public health on those recommendations as far as how long to quarantine or I know Dr. Rohr sent me an email on the CDC guidelines this last Friday, I believe, about just how, to be fever free or symptom free, I think for, I have it here somewhere in all this paper, but yes, we would put all that together as far as expectations go, and same thing with any of the students that were quarantining as well. We make sure that the other things we'd be required to do is we'd have for lack of a better word, like a quarantine room. So if students were exhibiting symptoms and were down at the clinic, our nurses would be, placing students in a room adjacent to the clinic, contacting parents and things like that. So there wouldn't be exposure in the clinic if there was suspected COVID-19 situation too. So there's a bunch of guidelines that would be in place in regards to the safety and dealing with those kinds of things. Mrs. Dierup is actually meeting with our school nurses tomorrow, I think, or Wednesday, and having conversations about that as well.
Okay. And then I just had a couple more questions regarding option 2. How will, since we're going to be, the discussion is to outsource it, how will those students transition back to Centerville schools when this option is removed? At some point, we will have a vaccine or we won't have to offer this option anymore. I mean, God willing, we will get through this as a country. So how will those students transition back? Will they retain any sort of an advisor through Centerville City Schools to check up on them and their progress, not only through the curriculum, but social and emotional, because they're still going to be enrolled in the district at the high school or middle school level? Will they retain the same advisor to maybe check up on them? Will they retain maybe the same homeroom teacher in the elementary schools? Where are we in that thought process?
So I think the first step is really trying to get our arms around how many students, families want to take advantage of this option 2, first of all. And then once we have an idea about what the numbers look like, we can start to work to address all of the situations. So, I think, maybe, and I'm just going to say maybe, potentially, if we had one of our teachers who potentially maybe had documentation from a physician that they should not be in our school buildings because of an underlying health concern, but basically are healthy, and some of these what we're also looking at is potentially maybe one of our teachers could actually teach the curriculum. And so that, I can't tell you that that's going to be 100%. I can't tell you that right now, because we don't know what those numbers look like, but we would look at that as a potential solution to do that if we could, and if it was doable based on the numbers. If not, you know, they do have teachers that work, and it would be similar to, you know, if we had a new student that was enrolling. We always get a lot of students that enroll like in January as we approach the second semester at all levels. And so, you know, they would have gone through their learning for the semester, and they would have be, you know, kind of coming back into the regular program with us. So academically, you know, we don't see that there's a lot of concern that way. Obviously, it would be a change because they would, you know, pivot from being that total remote to coming back in person. You know, the social emotional is again something that we have to consider and think about. And again, how we problem solve that is again going to be, I think, dependent upon the numbers, how many people want to take advantage of that. And but that's important to us as well, and what that would look like and how that would go. You know, we have advisory systems at the high school and the middle school, obviously homeroom teachers at the elementary. So we have to problem solve that based on the numbers of students and how we would do that. Again, it may be something that we have our own staff work on that too. So.
Okay, and then my last question is just regarding the cost associated with outsourcing the vendor for the fully remote option. Are we expecting an additional funding? I know the governor has talked about some of that. We don't know if, when that'll come to fruition. What are we looking at as far as costs there?
So it varies, but you know, we're looking at in the ballpark of, in some cases, about $145 per student. Is that right, Sheree? Is that what you shared? Or, I'm sorry.
The agreement that Montgomery County has worked out with one of the vendors is $185 per student for the whole program. So it's either 5 or 7 classes.
I'm sorry, is that a semester or for the year?
I believe it's a semester.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to answer your second question, though, Allison, we are not getting specific funding to cover this, but first of all, we think it's the right thing to do so that parents don't have to withdraw and choose something else. Also, if they were to choose some kind of charter program, you know, they would take a significant amount of that state foundation funding with them. You know, we get what is it, approximately $1,800 for students, but they would take the full amount if they were leaving and going to a charter school of about $6,500 or something like that. So we think it's the right thing to do for the students and for their families first and foremost, but secondly, we think it makes sense financially as well.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Sure.
Before I ask a couple of questions I have, does anyone else have any others, Dave?
Yeah, just a quick thing. Just so you guys know, Dayton Children's Hospital is going to be working with a lot of the pediatricians around the community. We're trying to get everyone together to sort of get on the same page in terms of how we're going to handle things like if a parent requests, I want a letter or an excuse not to have my child wear a mask. And I think it'll be important that we look truly at medical reasons for not wearing masks, not just because a mother or father says, I don't want my kid wearing a mask. So hopefully we can get together and get all the physicians in the community on board and not just write notes for parents, because that's likely going to be one of the things that will happen. And I think when we get these letters, we need to verify that it truly is a medical reason for doing it rather than just not wanting to do it.
Jeff?
I'm good, John.
Okay. Megan?
Yeah, I had a couple more based on Allison's. Would it make more sense if the kid would go Monday, Wednesday, and then every other Friday instead of switching them around so much so parents can have their work schedule more concrete? So instead of going A, B, and then B starting on Monday instead of A, wouldn't it be make more sense to go Monday, Wednesday, and then every other Friday?
I mean, again, there's a lot of different models and ways you could look at that. I think our thoughts were, it provided some good consistency for the students and for staff to see their students. And secondly, we also felt that, you know, if we could communicate this out, you know, to parents, they could start to work with, you know, their employers and hopefully there'd be some flexibility there if that was needed. I think you'd have to have some flexibility no matter kind of what structure or what kind of pattern you establish. So again, I don't know that there's one better than another. You know, we just, as we kicked around a lot of different ideas, we looked at a lot of different plans from across the country, across the state of Ohio, and just, you know, settled on, thought this one made sense. But so I don't know. I mean, there may be something better out there that we're not thinking of, or another rationale or reason why there'd be a better way of establishing a different pattern of attending. I think honestly, we just thought that it was consistent for the students and the teachers. So, but we just Adam.
Just one thing to consider, because we have considered a number of models like that throughout the week. In that situation, you know, your A students who would come Monday, Wednesday, every other week, they would be off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So, and again, there's positives to all of these. I think that that's been part of the challenge this entire summer, is that, you know, it's not perfect. We know it's not going to be perfect. Perfect is getting everybody back, but we have to be safe. And so as we try to navigate that, there's pluses and minuses. So we did look at that, and I think that it does provide a different type of consistency, but it also creates some gaps at times for some of the cohorts of students in that model.
Okay. And then Tom, did I hear you correctly say that there's only 9 kids now in the preschool classrooms? You're muted.
Yes, that's correct. You may recall in the Friday update, maybe 2 weeks ago, I wrote you about the Ohio Jobs and Family Services. The mandate from the governor came out about when he opened up all the daycares. The mandate was that no more than 9 students for daycare. And unfortunately, our preschool, all the preschools fall underneath the Ohio Jobs and Family Services. So we sent a letter out to the families of all of our preschool students, indicating, it was our typical students, indicating that unless that ruling is in place till August the 9th, and our understanding is that that order is going to be continued. It was put in place for 120 days and it ends on August the 9th. Our understanding is that it's going to be extended. We've been working with the legislators, ODE, the governor's office, to try to get this changed, and we're still working on it. So, but we felt the right thing to do was to send a letter out to the parents of our typical children, indicating that your son or daughter was accepted into the AM or the PM session, but for right now, we can't have them attend unless something changes for the school year. So.
So all our preschoolers are on, they're not IEPs, Tammy, I can't remember what they're called, but the equivalent of an IEP. Correct then?
Our preschoolers are on IEPs.
Are they called IEPs?
They are in preschool, yes.
Okay, so all our preschoolers then are on an IEP.
Yes.
So they would.
We are required to provide services to students that have a disability that are preschool age. We're not required to provide it to typical, but yes, they have IEPs.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all my questions for now.
John, can I just say one last thing real quick before you go? And I definitely don't want to open this discussion today, but I think at some point we're going to need to have a discussion about sports and athletics. We sort of not discussed this and sort of threw it by the side, but I think with everything going on in sports, college level, pro level, I think we need to make some decisions on what we're going to do as a school district going forward. I mean, to have our students continue to play sports in full contact. And I know the Ohio Athletic Association just came out today and said, we're a go for everything. But if we're not going to allow students back in school and we're going to have limitations, again, I just think it's something we need to have a discussion about, but not right now.
Allison, did you have anything else?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Henderson, I have a question, and I've talked to you a little bit about this before the meeting. We have this idea that we want everyone to wear a mask, and Dr. Rohr mentioned this earlier about what physicians may be doing for requests not to be wearing a mask. We have, I'm sure, citizens that go live in our area and have kids going to our district, just like they are across the country, that don't believe in masks and will maintain that you can't make them wear a mask. What are we going to do in situations where children, because of their parents, don't wear a mask and refuse to wear a mask?
That's a very good question, Mr. Dahl. I think we have to have some conversation about how we handle that situation. I've thought a lot about that, and I agree with everything that you said, and we may have some situations like that. I believe that wearing face masks is the right thing to do for the safety of our staff and students. And I would like to, move forward in making sure that that's a reality in all of our school buildings and on our school buses. I guess I would work hard to work with all of our parents to make sure that happens, and or look at what we as a group, including the board, have determined would be a medical reason or a documented reason for that not to occur. So that's a very good question, though. So.
Well, obviously an option is that they will be the online classes.
Correct.
That's an option.
Right.
That may not be the choice of the parents. I just didn't want the elephant in the room not to have some input, at least at this point in time. We're going to have to make a decision on that. I think it will occur. I hope it doesn't occur. But I think what's going on across the country that we may see that occur. Yeah, and not be worried about getting a doctor slip. They're just going to say, that's my right, and I'm the parent, and you can't tell me otherwise. So we'll have to deal with that if it comes up. Hopefully it won't come up.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. It will probably.
I assume we can get some legal judgment on that too. If we have to tell the student or the parent they need to come and pick up the child and not do it. So, I mean, obviously, I think that's going to be an important issue.
Correct. Right.
Haven't seen one yet, but we'll see what happens.
Oh, yeah. And you're right, John, it will happen.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Henderson, unless you got anything else to go, we'd be ready to go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the